So I'm going to call us to order for our Wednesday, September 27, 2023, 2 p.m. meeting. We do have a forum for that. And the first item, since Mr. Greg is online, if we could make a motion to allow him to participate electronically. Greg, we would just need you to state your location and your reason for online participation.
I'm self-quarantined. I was with an employee yesterday that notified me last night he had COVID, and I'm in Albemarle County.
Thank you, sir. And is there a motion to allow Greg to participate? Second, is there a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, perfect. You are in and are allowed to participate. We'll go to comments from the public. Do we have any members of the public here that would like to speak today? I do not see any online. So that will take us to our consent agenda, which has the May 24th draft minutes, the July 26th draft minutes, and the monthly financial update. Anything there that we need to review? Or
there are multiple months of financials. Wow.
A little bit.
Because
gotcha. So there's a lot in there. Any edits or changes to anything on consent? Then if we could have a motion to approve the consent. So moved. Second.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? Abstentions? Great. And then that will take us to project updates. Number 4, the RHP events planning, networking, lunch, and learns. And yep, somebody you're getting ready, Ruth, to talk on that.
Yes. So we had been planning to do a bunch of learns this fall due to constraints of schedules and getting potential speakers lined up. We are moving it to winter. We have one scheduled for January. And we are reaching out to additional speakers, but if you know anyone who would be a good presenter, please reach out to them and ask. And if they are willing, please connect me with them or connect for each.
Great. So January 1st. Okay. And that will take us to any questions there. Want to be a speaker? Sure. Look at that.
There we go.
Well, I should probably. I don't know if I should. I want to shift when I work on later and stuff. But I would be happy to help talk about it. Certainly on the table.
The next item, number 5, AmeriCorps Vista introduction and updates.
Yeah. So most of you have met Jamie Self. She started with us in mid-August. She comes from Richmond, where she worked in mortgage lending. She's a UVA alum, but she's currently working on a master's degree in data analytics and policy at Johns Hopkins. I would like her to take a moment right now and share what she's currently working on in years.
So Ruth already sort of mentioned a piece of the communication strategy that I've been helping the team on. So the lunch and learns, the speakers, that's a big part of it. The networking events, the newsletter. There should be a newsletter coming in early October. I'm drafting that right now, so we'll have that in front of everyone very soon. Blog posts, we're looking at things like potential case studies, just from different strategies around the state, the regions, and also as tools come along, hopefully we'll have some user guides, maybe even some story maps. So just integrating some web app features into the data tools to show people how to use them, how you would use them, and just general context for what they will be doing. So in those data tools, another piece of that would be grant libraries. So that's supposed to be more of a resource for nonprofit partners, people who do housing education and counseling, also a little bit more community facing. And then probably more relevant would be the funding library to the partners. So giving a little bit of an overview about grants that maybe you use a lot, maybe you don't know about or use, minimum, maximum, ask, state cap, timeframes, just sort of a general catch-all location to go to filter through. Hopefully also by area. So if something's a little bit more applicable to a rural area, you'll be able to filter that out or in. And then also real-time housing dashboard. So that's probably going to be further into next year, but that would have rental and homeownership statistics, hopefully keeping it up with local data, census data, an overall regional look, and then ideally also individual counties and city analytics. And then hoping to get a little bit more information from the Virginia Center for Housing Research on how to integrate those local data sources, and also speaking with Housing Forward about their zoning atlas efforts to see if that's something that we could use. That's pretty much the gist of it for now.
That's it?
That's it. That's all. But
And then item number 6, is it Neeson, not Neeson Consulting?
Yeah.
And
So we engaged with Neeson Consulting to do an engagement membership and bylaws review under Virginia Housing Tier 2 capacity building grant. The grant was awarded June 1st, and we issued a notice to proceed, and the work commenced July 1st. Amy is here with Karen Ford, the colleague, to present the research so far and recommended changes to bylaws on best practices and having done peer organization review, and also keep your input today. This aligns with module 1 of the timeline that's in the package. For your application.
Hello, everybody. There's some documents that I'm going to be referring to that are over there. So I don't know if you've seen them or you need a copy of them, but I will be referring to them in the PowerPoint. So appreciate the opportunity to present to you guys today. As Ruth said, I've been working since I guess the end of July on researching several organizations on bylaws and membership. So that was the part from module 1. So I'm just going to start the PowerPoint because I think it kind of summarizes everything. Let me move this up so I can see. Okay. So again, as Ruth said, Nissen Consulting was hired through an RFP based on capacity building grant from Virginia Housing, and it was to research membership bylaws and stakeholder engagement. I signed the contract on June 12th. Notice to proceed was with the work was July 5th. And then we had one meeting with Ian Baxter, who gave us some background on the Charlottesville housing ecosystem. And then I presented to this group via Zoom to kind of gain some background information. So I'm not going to read through all this, but these are the timelines, unless you think I should read through. Yeah, these are the timelines. And so as you can see, this one completes module 1, which is best practices. And then module 2 will be innovations after that, when I'll do some survey stakeholding. And then module 3 will be, I'll give a review of the structure and proposed organizational structure, review of budget and past contributions. I'll also work with Ruth and her staff to create a sustainable funding model, and I'll present back to this group to get approval and any changes. And then following that module, I'll be creating a board manual for this organization and for review and approval. And then the last module 4 will be I work with the staff and executive committee to support sharing the implementation of learnings and present the final recommendations to this committee and the full partnership. One of the things I'll add on this collaborations and partnerships is I had the opportunity to speak to some of the statewide organizations like Erica Sims at Housing Forward and Brian Cozio. And so I asked if there was an organization that compiled all this information at the state level. He said it was not existing, and he wanted to know if he could have my research. I said that was fine. And he talked about in the future probably gathering these organizations to network at least once a year, whether it'll be staff, board, executive committee. That's still to be determined. So my process was I looked at similar organizations who facilitated regional coordination to ensure housing for all. And these organizations typically bring together cities and counties in their respective regions of the Commonwealth for education, advocacy, and coordination of affordable housing efforts. So at this time, I researched 8 organizations throughout the Commonwealth. 6 serve different regions and 2 serve statewide. And so there is a document that I gave you a copy of that's called Comparison Organizations. It talks about every organization, where they serve, and it also gives just a sampling of from census.gov of their population. So what do I do? Okay. So then I actually emailed and called many different organizations, as you can see from the bylaws comparison chart, and I asked questions about number of board members. Sorry, I asked questions about makeup of the board, officers and executive committees as outlined in their bylaws, term limits, number of meetings, and this information is basically outlined on this document here. And then I also did the other document, which is called the Central Virginia Research Housing Partnership Research Chart. And these were, I asked number of board members, does the organization have an advisory board or a similar council? Asked for a number of organizational members, if it was a membership organization. If they had a fee structure, I asked for that. I also asked for membership benefits, and then an annual operating budget makeup, and staff. And so the statistics varied, and I'll go through that in my summary. So this is the summary of what I researched, and feel free to stop me if you have any specific questions or anything. So on the number of board members, they typically range from a minimum of 3, and these were not official board members because this organization had no bylaws. It was the one in the Northern Shenandoah Valley, and they're a collaboratory. Then the maximum people had was 23 board members. The board makeup ranged from less restrictive to different sides of the region. For example, Hampton Roads Housing Coalition Consortium, which is a membership organization, and interestingly, the only organization that came up as a membership organization, called for equal distribution among the public, private, and nonprofit sector, and representation from Southside Hampton Roads, Virginia Peninsula, and the remaining director from anywhere in Hampton Roads region. Some had work industry and residency requirements, some did not. The Alliance for Housing Solutions, serving Arlington County in Northern Virginia, called for diverse representation, but they didn't call out any work industry or resident requirements. And then most of them had a balanced makeup by race, sex, or ethnic and geographic, with a large percentage of representation from housing providers or homeless assist providers. There were 2 organizations that served the entire state, and they called for the similar makeup that I just mentioned, but they also included a 51% representation from housing providers or homeless assist providers. So I don't know if anybody have any questions so far. Okay.
Did you define housing providers?
It was like Habitat. It was like similar to Charlottesville, the Piedmont Housing Alliance. Some of it was the housing authorities.
For-profit developers too?
It varied. Okay. There was some nonprofit and some for-profit. Okay, so then I'm going to go to the bylaws now. On the summary of findings for the bylaws, term limits I thought was interesting, ranged from the majority having 3-year terms with either 2 or 3 consecutive terms, or some had 2-year terms with only 2 consecutive terms. As far as officers, term limits, and committees, 3 organizations have nominations governance committees as part of the standing committees, and the majority of organizations had 1-year term limits for officers, as well as holding office until a successor executive committee member is appointed and qualified. And I just wanted to point out, one of the things that I do in my nonprofit practice is I work through BoardSource, which is an organization out of DC that does board work around the country, and they give out best practices and different things. And so one of the things that they recommend is a governance committee for every board. And this committee can add value for strategic recruitment, effective board engagement, and intentional revitalization. So I'm going to continue on the bylaws. In research from the organizations, 3 organizations had leadership councils or advisory boards. Northern Virginia Affordable Housing Alliance had a leadership council that served in an advisory role to the board. They met 6 times, they meet 6 times a year. Interestingly, they have no term limits, and they include representatives from organizations and individuals committed to the mission of Navajo. And the members of the leadership council are asked to make a financial contribution, which does support their program and activities. Virginia Housing Alliance, they have a leadership council that serves as an advisory role to the board. They have 20 members who serve 1 term with no limits on renewal. Housing Forward, they have 3 board members of the total number of board members that can be designated as advisory or non-voting. And then Partnership for Housing Affordability in Richmond's bylaws outline an advisory board made up of public members, but this has not been put into place yet. Oh, and as I mentioned before, one organization was a membership organization, Hampton Roads Housing Consortium. Most were nonprofits or coalitions.
Yeah, for Navajo, was it every member contribute financially, or just members of the leadership council?
I don't know. They just said members of the leadership council make a, but I can call Jill and ask her.
I'm just curious,
Yeah. I can call Jill and find out for you. So these are my, excuse me, draft recommended changes to the bylaws. I don't have any changes to the membership structure yet because I think that that will come as the next module happens. But for number of board members, I recommend reviewing the role of the executive committee and the roles of board members as outlined in the bylaws. It might be feasible to make the executive committee the primary governing body. Other board members can be transitioned to an advisory board or a leadership council board. Board members would have more of an active role and serve alongside the executive committee as advisors. So that's my first recommendation. Yes, ma'am.
So if you've seen that done before, like transitioning from a voting board member to an advisory member, how do you deal with the kind of messaging of that? Because obviously some people will think that's a downgrade of their position, they don't have a vote anymore, and how do you keep that?
I think if you do enough to keep the advisory board motivated and engaged, then and the executive committee appears to meet with the advisory board and talk to them and get recommendations, I think you get more buy-in that way, so that it doesn't look like the executive committee's over here and the advisory board is over here. They kind of govern together, but if there's a vote on something, the advisory board cannot vote. And also it would allow for a lot more openness in the structure here, because I think that you have a very good structure, but it's really strict. And I didn't find that so much in the other ones that I researched. And so I'm guessing that I'll find from the membership work I do that there are some nonprofits who want to be involved. There's probably the Charlottesville Housing Authority that wants to be involved. I know Piedmont Housing Alliance is on this, but I'm guessing there's a few others. What's his name? Sunshine Nathan. I forgot which one he does. Yeah. Okay. So,
can I make a comment?
Sorry, Greg. Can I just follow up for a second? In the next module, will you test the idea of a leadership advisory council with the other members?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I haven't made. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What you refer to as the strict organization, I think, is probably one of the biggest assets we have. Namely, we deliberately want people from all 4 sectors, meaning public, private, not-for-profit, and residents. And if we expand the board or find a way to expand, I don't think it needs to be limiting at all. I think the greatest strength of this organization is that all 4 of those pillars are active at every level, at the executive and at the full board.
And I'm not recommending that you shouldn't have all that representation. I just think it's a matter of, you know, as you'll see in my next recommendation is, I think you could switch it up a little bit. Like I know that you have, well, first thing we talked about is definitely, I think you should have some additional representation, whether on the advisory board or on the executive council from the citizen resident population of urban and rural, possibly an additional one from each, because I think that'll bring a bigger voice from them. But I noticed that you have an appointed builder representative, a developer representative, and a design professional. And so I was saying it might be easier and better if you have one representative from the 3 areas and then alternate, so that, however, if you decide to set term limits, then for the first term, or you know, the one representative from the builder would fill out his or her term, then you bring on a second representation. You know, because to me, and I apologize if I'm insulting anyone, but I think they all sort of similar, they have similar backgrounds and could probably provide you with similar advice in those 3 areas.
Well, I think the executive board does that right now. It has one of us on the executive board, and then to get the 4 pillars of the full board, we have several private sector, several public sectors, several not-for-profit sector, and so on, and those could certainly expand. So I think we're close to that now.
Okay. The other thing is that I know that you have a health industry person, so from UVA, I'm assuming, and that person, I don't know if that point of view could also be shared with, like, by a commissioner on this, you know, one of the TJPDC commissioners, or a nonprofit representative, like a free clinic. I just thought that would open it up a little bit more. And then in general, I thought a less restrictive makeup to allow for representation from the community at large. Perhaps, sorry, perhaps a member of the Charlottesville Housing Authority or more organizations in the affordable housing space or social service sector. So you want me to move on, or any other questions? And again, these are just recommendations, and what I hope that will happen today is you guys will take some time after this meeting and look at these recommendations, and thank you, and tell me, you know, if you want me, if you think, you know, you need more information to back up my recommendations, or if you, one second. Or, you know, obviously it's your organization. I'm just making some recommendations from what I've observed as an outsider.
Two things. One, I think expanding the more groups like the Housing Authority is a good idea, and that fits within this 4-pillar concept. Secondly, just an FYI, we do not, our health person is not from UVA. It's from Region 10. So the hands-on people taking care of mental health in our region.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I was just, thanks, Amy. I was wondering, from your research, so as I understand it, the recommendations do have this group essentially, or whatever this group could be transitioned to or called, as the main, it's the primary governing body within an advisory board that can be more open to provide a greater amount of input, less restrictive on that part. Is your recommendation coming from, like, specifically some of the challenges that, or let's say things that, you know, Ian and staff, which is TJPDC or other people that you talk to, are trying to address, as well as what you've seen in the community? Like, where is that primarily coming from, a particular area, or is it from the research?
My recommendations weren't influenced by anything on the staff, or basically what I did, or my methodology was, I looked at the 8 organizations that were, you know, similar to you, and then I looked at kind of what everybody was doing and kind of thought, you know, and I did talk to, you know, like Jill Norcross, I talked to Erica Sims, I talked to, you know, Brian for a long time, but nobody had anything negative or positive to say. You know, I didn't get to that detail where I said, do you think you know, do you think Central Virginia Regional Housing Partnership should do X and Y? You know, I probably will ask some questions in the membership part and then make additional recommendations or even come back and revise some. But, you know, it's my intent not to, you know, I don't want to give people, I don't want to put in people's mind that there might be something, you know, I just want to see what's out there. And if it needs to be changed or added or deleted or whatever, you can do that.
The way I understand this one is making sure that our bylaws, this recommendation feels to me that our bylaws aren't dictating the exact rules and instead would say for private sector representatives rather than a developer
exactly
and appointed builder. So then it would give either the governance appointed nominating committee or the executive committee would then take on that responsibility to make sure it's diverse in each of the sectors rather than dictating that within the bylaws.
Right. Yeah, I've done a lot of bylaws work over the years. I'm not a lawyer, so I always have a lawyer look at it when it's done. But you know, the bylaws that I've been looking at recently for other organizations, not housing organizations, are less restrictive and more open, so that you can kind of tweak it a little bit as you need. Because best practice is typically to look at your bylaws every 2 to 3 years. Doesn't mean you have to change them, but it means you look at them. But if you don't leave them a little bit open, then you could be changing them more than you really want. Excuse me. So as far as number of board members, I recommend, again, oh, did I say this? I did this. I'm sorry. Let me go on to the next one. Sorry. Oh, so now we're talking about term limits. So in your bylaws, you don't really spell out term limits. In a lot of the ones I looked at, term limits were spelled out more specifically in revised bylaws to conclude 3-year terms with either 2 or 3 consecutive terms. And again, going back to my board source knowledge, board source recommends term limits because they provide a respectful and organized way to separate inactive, ineffective, or difficult board members. They allow an organization to engage and foster an expanding base of volunteers. So the other thing, I looked at officers' term limits and committees of specifically officers. So I recommended you did not have a nominating committee as a standing committee. Sometimes people make this part of the governance committee, which, and so I definitely think you need a nominating committee. I also would implement 1-year term limits for officers and have them finish at the end of your fiscal year. And then I would not make any change right now to officers holding office until a successor executive committee member is appointed. I thought that was done a lot in a lot of the bylaws. So I don't think there's, you know, that you can do that or not do that. Any questions?
Most of them switching it this weird versus the calendar. It's always.
It depended on the organization. But that could be calendar year for you guys instead of fiscal. I mean, it doesn't really.
1 year just doesn't seem like you get a lot done. 2 years makes more sense to me, just an opinion.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that too, Greg. I think that if you come in as a chair of a board or whatever, and you have certain objectives you want to achieve, it's hard to do that in a year. So I'd almost, you know, say 2 years would be the right time for an officer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. I mean, I've served as, you know, board president of a couple of organizations, and they're typically, some are 1 year, some are 2 year. And admittedly, I do feel like the 1 years are probably, for me, wasn't a long enough time, but some people like turning them over more because it gets different opinions out there.
And then also the frequency of their meeting. Yeah, it's a quarterly or a biannual meeting. You know, in there. Yeah. Like,
the staff there to carry forward the programs and the projects. I think the continuity of sure it's less important, but I would agree with you.
Okay, so as far as an advisory board or leadership council, I think that additional members who are part of the full board could transition to an advisory board or leadership council. This will increase the voices that are heard and increase engagement of members. Your advisory board or leadership council could also be asked to make a financial contribution, even though you're not a membership organization. It wouldn't be seen as a membership or as a membership contribution, but then that could help support your programs and activities. So you'd have a little bit more money in your budget to do these lunch and learns and whatever other educational activities you want to do.
Did you have a recommendation?
Not yet. I think once I talk to people and see, because one of the questions I want to know is, you know, based on, do they come to things? Do they feel like if they come, it doesn't matter? You know, I haven't formulated the questions yet, but I'm just talking off the top of my head. So that's basically the first part of my research. You can, I think the charts are really interesting if you have time to look at them. I mean, a lot of them have separate staff. Some are staffed, you know, with a very part-time person. So I think that's definitely something to look at. So far, I don't think I would recommend that you guys become a membership organization, but, you know, I definitely will do some more research to do, you know, do that, see what that
membership organization meaning a members.
Yeah. Yeah, Hampton Roads Consortium. So what they do is they have like a, whatever the membership structure is, if you're a nonprofit, if you're an individual, if you're a government agency, and then that allows you to get certain benefits, you know, of different things that come to their lunch and learns, and their membership money supports their lunch and learns because they're staffed by their commission, their secretary of their commission, Benitha.
Comments or questions? I'm surprised you found that any organizations too.
Yeah, I think that might be the most similar to what we're trying to accomplish. Maybe any jump out in particular?
Not yet. I mean, I think as I keep exploring, you know, because it's interesting because only one was a consortium, which is the Shenandoah Valley. They don't even have, like, I think they rotate. So this woman, Kim Herbstreit serves as she's the head of Habitat for Humanity in the community. So she runs the council, but they don't have any kind of formal, they do lunch and learns whenever they can. You know, and Hampton Roads would have been the most similar to you from size, you know, but I think the fact that they're a membership organization, you know, is not maybe not a good idea. So, I mean, I guess specifically, are there, do you think that this represents a fair balance of organizations, or should I look into a few more? And I also want to get some, is there enough information on bylaws that need to be gathered? Are there other things that you want looked at?
I think particularly with this leadership committee, the advisory committee, that more is better in that role, particularly if the executive committee is the decision-making body. CHRA is one good add.
Are you asking a question, or are you just making a comment? Because I couldn't. Okay, good.
The openness or the trying to get what you said about the defined area that the teams made a point on, like specific designer or developer. Like in Almar, we have citizen advisory committees. They were very specific like that. Commercial represent, school represent, small neighborhood represent. And I kind of threw that book out the window. People on here and make sure they're geographically mixed and use that as a guide. Lets you put a functioning group together. So I think that Greg's getting at that. You should be able to have that ability to include people.
Right, and I don't think I'm saying you shouldn't have that ability. I just think in your bylaws specifically, you might want to just lay it out a little, more open. How you do that.
The only thing I'm wondering is there an organization in another state that's kind of a best in class for this kind of work? You know, it doesn't have to be just limited to Virginia, right?
And I'm happy to do that. I mean, I've talked to Erica Sims a couple times and nobody's been able to give me, I mean, Erica gave me most of these organizations that I called. But if you guys know of one or two, I'm happy to, I'm not afraid to call. I just literally don't know. I mean, I could just, pick somewhere in the United States and call, but that's probably not useful.
There probably are specific places that we've talked about that are doing great work. It seems like some of these organizations pop up around very specific projects. As opposed to being a standing organization to work on a bigger issue, it stands up to get this development done or get this project done. So that's probably why there's not. I mean,
when these bylaws and this organization was put together, did you look at other? I mean, how did you come up with that was stuff that was in here?
I think they looked to the other bodies that exist.
The ones that existed.
Oh, you did.
Started since then.
Gotcha.
So there weren't a lot of things with that. A lot of the statewide ones felt a little less applicable to what we were trying to do here, which is just create a venue for everybody to get together in a very specific regional.
I know you said like we have the regional transit partnership.
Yeah.
So that side being organizations like what we stood that up. So, this was in a lot of ways model that.
Are their bylaws written similar to this?
Yeah, it started an operational framework. Yes. Although the regional housing partnership makeup is very different.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're kind of unique. Yeah, I know everyone wants to think of themselves as unique, but we are. I don't know. It does seem like an interesting mix of something like almost direct service programming, like the housing locator thing, the housing research and the plans that we provided. I mean, those are very direct, mixed with larger advocacy interests. So it's interesting that mix there. Something that's maybe similar that could help just bounce some ideas off of is the continuum of care program model. A lot of homeless service all homeless service organizations are organized that way. There's a convening body similar to this here.
Who runs the one here? Because I know that
that's what I did.
Oh, okay. Because I worked with Samantha Shukas.
Oh yeah.
And I did their strategic plan. And then and I've also worked with Kelly.
Yeah. But anyways, those are similar in a way, but those are very direct service focus. They set a lot of policy for how to carry out programs, and so there's a difference there. I mean, it's a little bit of a mix of both, and I think that's an interesting thing about the organization. I just think we should keep that in mind. Whatever service we'll want to get done best.
I mean, to me, I think it would make sense if you guys take home the PowerPoint and the research, and then you can connect to me through Ruth, and because I'll be starting them. I'm going to be giving a list of questions, and I've already started researching. I spoke to Sarah Milston, so I have the organizations that she did for your strategic plan. And obviously, I'm not going to contact anybody until I work with Ruth to see, who's appropriate and also who might be missing, and give you guys that list also, so we make sure we get a broad swath of people for the membership. And I can also vet the bylaws with some of them. I mean, some are not going to know enough to worry about the bylaws. You know what I'm saying? And some may. So, and I don't mean that derogatory. It's just I don't want to waste people's time. But I learned a lot. I mean, I knew enough about housing organizations to be dangerous because I've done a lot of stuff through Virginia Housing over the years, but I had never gone into this much detail. So it's been very interesting to learn. And I think you guys are doing a great job. I mean, nothing that I'm saying is a slight on any of the work you're doing. You're doing great work. And this is an interesting region because you've got so much rural and urban, it's interesting. I don't know who else really has this kind of makeup, because Northern Virginia is not as rural, obviously, as you guys are.
So the additional feedback we're sending back, so she'll translate that over. So maybe you could put a call out just so that let's say it gives feedback, but it goes to everybody, so that we're not getting unless you're gonna keep a summary doc or something. But if there's a way to easily just put a file or something.
Like a Google Doc or something.
So that we're not working in isolation.
And if somebody thinks of another organization in a different state, I mean, I'm happy to research a few of them. I have no problem with that. Just don't even know where to start.
Well, right.
I did the regional housing partnership and came up with one from Kansas City, Baltimore, George Washington, Chicago. So there's a few. I mean, obviously
Do you think it's worth it?
But
yeah, I mean, if you give them to Ruth, and I'll be happy to, you know. I mean, because people are really willing to share. I mean, they didn't have any nobody turned me down for any requests of information, which I thought was good. I think people are wanting to work with other organizations that are doing similar work. So I look forward to that at the end.
Is there anything in addition that they need from us that we didn't address?
Nothing right now. I mean, again, I'll be sharing a potential membership questions and people who I'll be contacting, and I'm sure that will not be an all-inclusive list. Again, I'm going to start with the list that Sarah Milston used for your surveys for your strategic plan. And it may not even be appropriate to call some of those people, but I'll work with Ruth to make sure we, you know, get the right people on that list. No problem. You need us to stay around? Or? Okay. Okay. Yes, that's I felt I recognized from him. Yeah, that was really interesting. I don't know how about somebody that they decided to do a supportive, private supportive housing, private housing. Oh, really?
That's the latest that I heard.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right, the next item is business housing needs assessment updates. Virginia housing grant application. We got some of that.
We are looking at updating regional housing needs assessment that was done in 2018 and that's done in 2018. We have met with staff from Virginia Center for Housing Research at Virginia Tech. And we are anticipating applying for a Virginia Housing Community Impact Grant for the work to be done in November and possibly starting the work in early 2024. Foraging to landowners to have a baby for the project. Seems like it's about time for us to update that housing.
We're in the scoping stage now to identify what the full cost of it will be, how much Virginia Tech will do, how much we'll do, and whether or not the grant from Virginia Housing will cover the full cost, or we'll have to look to for additional support.
Excuse me, everyone, but the sound coming off the table mics is almost inaudible remotely.
Is that it?
I don't know if it's volume of everybody or whether you've got control of the volume of the mics, but I'm just trying to cling to every word, but it's very, very, very difficult.
And to be honest, I'm very hard to hear you.
Oh, my quiet. I'm sorry.
We will project better. Can you hear me now, Greg?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just have to project.
When was the last housing needs assessment completed? 2018.
It was 2019 release of 2018 data. So it'll be over 5 years by the time we release another one, and a lot has changed. Isn't it wild?
Yeah. Well, can I make a comment real quick about? I think it might be related to the housing needs assessment, but also maybe to some of the work that Davey.
That's right.
Davey's doing. The city. We had a board meeting earlier today. The city's interested in doing like a dashboard about community needs. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but they've asked us for some information from our database system on homeless services. And they're trying to create a key map. But anyways, they're creating a dashboard, a larger dashboard. I believe it's in partnership with some third-party agency. And I just mentioned it because it could be a full opportunity to share information back and forth, especially, I'm sure they would love to have access. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are going to love to have access to the housing needs assessment. But if that dashboard technology is already there, you know, it might be something interesting if you're also trying to create a dashboard and similar things, or you know, the city's working on something.
Do you know who it is?
Well, Misty Graves is on our board, and that's who I heard the information from. She's the director of human services over there. Yeah, just what
Albemarle has this nice big board every year, I think, on what their housing, picture of housing in Albemarle. Like, I've been trying to figure out how to get the data to do something like that in Nelson. I mean, we'd all either feed in or feed out, you know, from all of the data that we get. We don't need it for that.
And I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but the Virginia Tech, the center at Virginia Tech that we're working with, it'd be a little bit different than the way we did this previously. Because previously it was contracted out to a consultant completely. And this would be more of a process of training and engaging partners in the region to be able to learn the data and manipulate the data themselves, so we can more frequently look at that and know how to use it. So including our counties, our towns, our nonprofits, and they would coach us through creating this assessment ourselves, so we would better learn the tools that are available to us, which I think is really good for the sustainability part, to not have to necessarily have a contractor redo this every couple of years, but rather to build the capacity of staff, not just at our organization, but all of the organizations to be able to do this better.
Also, the initial way you did it with a contractor is it's by the time it's finished, it's already wrong. You know what I mean? And so
if you have some infrastructure to plug in data to,
exactly, like something that we can use to reform what we're doing, day to day, or year to year. Yeah, let's be realistic. We're not going to go that far.
Any other comments there? Number 8, Virginia Governor's Housing Conference attendance.
Yes, so in years past, we have sent the executive committee chair and vice chair to the Governor's Housing Conference. This year it is November 15th through 17th at the Hampton Roads Convention Center. We would like to change how we are sending folks to the conference this year, and offer anyone in this group would like to attend, please let me know. Covering registration.
I really go, but you have to date with your registration, but you can find me for it. That's not hard. I'll pay for the room to keep it fun.
Is there a lot of fun?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like they're all booked. So, hot topics.
We'll talk.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
I don't
think
think
that
mother-in-law.
I don't know how many from staff will be going. I know that I mean, it's Keith and I may still attend. It's just we're trying to do it differently through the years. Been on the heels of Vaco again this year, so
Yes, we're bringing back that.
I don't know.
But those are laughing with the school board one too. They used to be back to back and then they
Same time frame. But yeah, I encourage folks to. It's always a good conference, right? From attending it, it's always walk away from it with good information. So I know I've seen a lot of others there just through other Pinterest and presentations they have done. So if want to give it a go, I would certainly give it through so that we can sooner rather than later. All right, well then that brings us to our roundtable. Greg, do you want to start with the roundtable? You can hear me?
I can hear you. We're still guardedly optimistic in the city that before the end of this year, before the completion of this term of council, we will have a new zoning ordinance. Which will, by the way, I think open up a lot of sites for activity for the first time in many years.
Margaret.
Just old down report, not really a ton of stuff going on out there. We're gonna wait and see what happens when the elections are over.
How many are up on your board?
Just 2. So David Carr is up, he's being challenged, which is crazy for us to happen. You know, crazy. And then there's 2 people running in the South District that are retired, and there are 2 leads who are running against each other, which is also pretty rare for an to have women on the ballot. So I don't get to vote for any of this vote. But yeah, so it'll be interesting. So it looks like the board's gonna be a little more red by the time this is over. A lot more red, probably. Not that that's a bad thing.
I was gonna go and she said that about the else thing. I mean, it's, you know.
We were always a holdup, even like a blue.
Your chair likes
but it's starting to be less blue than it used to be. So, like I said, no commentary on what colors better.
I'll make some commentary.
Okay, you can do that.
Colette, before I do.
Nothing new from my end.
Anthony.
Well, my last day with BRAC is October 6th. And I start with the county on October 23rd as a housing program manager. So, yeah. So, my new boss right behind me. So yeah, I'm excited about that. I don't know. I mean, I know we're in the middle of membership talks for the CDR RHP, but I think one of my to-dos was to get another nonprofit to take my place in the meantime, right? Is that at least on the executive committee, right? Yeah. I haven't done that, so I've been remiss in my duties, but I'll
do you guys know who the replacement for you is?
Not yet. We're doing final interviews next week. I don't know, maybe I should, but I don't think it's a problem. So soon it's coming. It's coming soon, but it's not. No, it's coming soon. See, other news. A lot's shifting in homeless services these days. I mean, there's more on shelter homelessness for sure. It's been a big focus in city management. So that's just a big shift in terms of homeless population, especially visibly. The other positive thing was, you know, I think I've mentioned to you all that we've been working on decreasing veteran homelessness, and actually we reached functional zero of veteran homelessness in June or May, and which meant 3 or fewer veterans experiencing homelessness in our community from May through August. We had a few become homeless, so that we're at 6 right now. We want to get to 3, and I'm sure we will get there. But anyways, that was a huge accomplishment to get to 3 or fewer and hold that for 3 months. And so we were acknowledged at a national level by Community Solutions, and we're planning on doing a press release sometime in November, late October or November about it. Assuming we can get that 6 down to 3 again here quickly. So, but yeah, that was exciting. Right.
In Albemarle, we don't know that I have any new updates. I know that the memo went over from the July worksheet to the county with the minutes and the link to the meeting. I know that a lot of staff there have gone and watched that and have perused through the minutes in preparation for when the board, planning commission, and the RHP will get together later this fall. So the work continues on that, and once it's there, then hopefully we'll Just be a matter of reporting back the dates once things are scheduled. The clerk has to ramble all of these things, which can be fun for her. So it's not scheduled yet, but it's being worked on to get it on the books as soon as possible. I know that's going on. And anything else in the county that
No, we're really super excited Anthony's joining us. And he'll lead the Housing Choice Voucher Program team.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I need to download the knowledge.
That was the last thing we did. Oh, it's definitely not improving. I mean, they're like right there. Sorry, you should be more encouraging.
No, I appreciate the candor. I'm ready for the challenge.
Good. No,
I guess I finished with the, obviously we did not bring the full partnership together for this quarter. We didn't think we wanted to get the consultant back in front of us for this meeting. So we'll be targeting probably not the typical time for the full partnership meeting in the fourth quarter, because that runs right into the holidays. So there'll be a different date and time being put out to try to get the full partnership together. We'll be able to report on that strategic plan. Hopefully by then we'll be able to know when the work group on Albemarle Senate are in play. All that should be coming into shape pretty soon. But we will have the full partnership meeting in the fourth quarter by the end of the year. Anything else on that? Awesome. Well, there we have it. Under 60 minutes, and not for my own selfish needs either. It's just working that. So with that, if there are no objections, we will adjourn to the next executive committee meeting, which is on October 25th, 2023. Oh, you already have a full partnership schedule. Oh, great. Didn't know that. I better put that.
Thanks, Anthony, thank you. So you're still going to be around. I mean, we're going to open up the bylaws so that you can be